every so often you see those questionnaires come around again. What would you tell your younger self, right? And I think the few nuggets of wisdom that I've gleaned as an adult that I didn't already know as a child are probably things like women also enjoy sex. People will exploit your principles for their own ends, and that everything is shades of grey. Nobody's perfect. Nothing is perfect. Two things can be wrong at the same time, which kind of brings us to Tommy Robinson, I guess. Tommy likes to style himself as this great English British hero standing up against the establishment and speaking truth to power. It's a great image, it certainly plays well to the crowd, and the way in which the establishment has handled Tommy Robinson has been awful and has played directly into his hands. So the latest round of this is him being censored off Facebook and Instagram and probably other places as we go along. He's probably not long for YouTube either. So why is this happening? It's hard to say for sure. The claimed reason is calls to violence and horrendous stuff posted on his Facebook page, but I haven't seen any evidence of that actually being the case yet. I mean, there's no doubt that he is an obnoxious cunt, or that he is a chancer and a spiv and a charlatan. That's pretty obvious if you've tracked his career at all without having blinkers on. You will know this about him. Does that mean that it's right to censor him? Probably not, unless these things can actually be shown to be true, and you would think if he had done the things that he's been accused of, that would have made headlines and so on before now. The timing is also rather peculiar. Panorama's working on a documentary about him, a takedown, so it is said, and Tommy kind of preempted them by making his own documentary's a strong word, but video diatribe and drama about the whole thing called Panodrama, which did expose some underhanded, shitty tactics by the BBC, by Panorama, in going after him. But that doesn't absolve Tommy of sin, just like him being somewhat correct about grooming gangs and so on doesn't absolve him of all the other things that he's done. Two things are capable of being shit at the same time. Both the BBC and Facebook's treatment of Tommy and Tommy himself. So just before you go leaping to his defence, as you know, any red-blooded free speech warrior would, consider who you're defending and how they're exploiting your principles in order to stay relevant. It's important to be fair to Tommy Robinson. I think it's important to be fair to anybody. Yeah, I still try to see the best in people, even though many of them make it very difficult, and Tommy is one of those. But his story is at least somewhat of a redemption arc, which can be hard to believe looking at all the things he's accused of and has done just within the past couple of years. But he started out as a football hooligan, member of the BNP, founder of the EDL. He's been in the true far right, and he has moved gradually towards the centre. In a more cynical frame of mind, I might say that's because that's where the money is. But he's gone from a true extreme fringe to the centre ground, or the very fringe of the centre ground, the very edge of the Overton window as represented in mainstream British politics, which is UKIP. To some extent, that's because the Overton window has shifted to the right, while he's shifted very, very slightly to the left. But yeah, we should still acknowledge that he's turned his back on the EDL and similar groups, and is now advising UKIP, which in certain contexts should be considered a far-right party if we're talking about mainstream politics. That's how I've described it before. But then the Conservatives are pretty much a far-right party at this point as well, at least within that Overton window. But yeah, at least partially, it's a redemption story from the far, 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 far right to the far right. And yeah, we should acknowledge that he seems at least somewhat capable of personal growth and change. Acknowledging all of that, the positive side, the fact that he has been having the conversation that many people have been refusing to have or even shutting down, doesn't absolve him of anything. So if you're going to defend the guy, know who you're defending. His name's not Tommy Robinson, that's taken from a football hooligan, and the Tommy is probably to try and tap into that whole military side of things. His real name is Stephen Christopher Yaxley-Lennon. That's his real name. No wonder he goes by Tommy Robinson. But even so, he's gone by other names as well. A whole passel of them, really. Andrew McMaster, Wayne King, should have been Wayne Kerr perhaps, Paul Harris. Yeah, it's good, decent people don't necessarily go by all these pseudonyms, do they? And yeah, he's been done for fraud. He's been done for assaulting an off-duty policeman who intervened to stop Tommy from beating his girlfriend, admittedly many years ago at this point. The fuss around the trial, the reason he was put in prison was because he was interfering with the course of justice. And there was a chance that his interference could have let the criminals walk free there. And it's not a spin you're going to hear from his side of things, but British courts are really sensitive to the idea of getting a fair trial. So for all he talked a good storm, he could well have ended up leading to these paedophiles, these groomers, getting off. Not going to prison, not being punished. It's there's so much else that he's done. Just go and look up his criminality. Now, a little bit here and there is one thing, but fraud on a large sort of conspiracy to defraud scale, which is what he did, repeated violence, interfering in court proceedings, these are all serious things. They shouldn't just be swept aside and ignored. And, of course, we know he's lied. Tim Pool pointed this out. He just lies blatantly about things that have happened, things that are on camera, even. And it doesn't seem to matter to the people that follow him. It probably should. If you're going to pin your hopes on someone, you want to make sure they're at least somewhat honest, don't you? Which brings us back around to this latest round of censorship. They already tried this out on Alex Jones, now they seem to be unpersoning Tommy Robinson, so we've gone from frothing conspiracy loon to furthest of the acceptable right. You gotta wonder how much more slippery that slope is going to get, and as someone who believes in free expression, marketplace of ideas and all the rest of it, it's quite concerning to see that creep happening so quickly. That said, he's a dick, he's a liar, he's a spiv, he's a chancer, he's a fraudster. He beats women. Has been caught at least once attempting to do that. These things aren't really in contention at all, and he has disrupted court proceedings. He has almost prevented justice being done to criminals of some of the worst sort possible. Given all of that, it doesn't excuse Panorama doing what they did, leading witnesses, prompting them on what to say, trying to dig dirt, make up accusations and so on to smear him. That's not good either. But then, I think we're all aware of the attacks on alternative media by mainstream media, because their bottom line is threatened. Basically, that's what it comes down to, and they want to be in control of the societal narrative, of the stories we tell ourselves, and alternative media is a threat to that, which is why they're constantly smearing anyone alternative as far right or whatever. In the case of Tommy, it's much more applicable, but he should be held to the same rules, held to account by the same rules as the rest of us. But for all we worry about the mainstream media and the mainstream social media and so on, you know, trying to cut us off from alternative sources of news, alternative viewpoints, difficult discussions and so on, I think the same can apply in the reverse. A lot of alternative media people tell you constantly that you can't trust any of the mainstream media, and this is the thrust of Tommy's panodrama thing. So why might someone who's a bit dodgy want to get you to trust him over the media that's attacking him? Why is he encouraging you not to watch anything on the BBC? Why is he encouraging you not to pay your television license? Because he wants to be in control of the stories about him, and that's what this seems to be about. Just be cognizant of who and what you're defending when you go to defend Tommy Robinson, because he's using you. Zang.
The police bring in reinforcements.
There was justice there, no poverty, and no violent crime.